Welcome to the cold, hard truth on sports. I apologize in advance if I am out of line here.
Brace yourselves, boys. We're going in.
Am I hallucinating here? Just what in the hell do you think you are doing?
I can't believe you.
I'm not reading. I'm just looking at the pictures.
Welcome to the cold, hard truth on sports.
Welcome, everybody, to the Cold Hard Truth on Sports. Another week. Real sports talk, real sports take here on the GoLong Media channel on blogtalkradio.com. You can also catch us over on the Spreaker app. That's Spreaker. It's like speaker with a R. It's not a lisp. It's a R. Also, over on YouTube channel, you can either search for at the CHT on sports, or you can search at Matt Long Sports. You should be able to find the show either way over there. And of course, just search for either the show name or at Matt Long Sports on SoundCloud. And you can listen to the show on SoundCloud too. It's supposed to be over on iTunes. I don't really monitor iTunes. Somos is also another one where it's supposed to be. So if you go there, check it out, and then let me know, because I haven't checked. But my gear hair says it's also going over there as well. So you can rest assured that you have some wonderful content and sports talk over on Somos and iTunes as well. Not really an Apple guy. That's why I don't use iTunes. I'm a Android guy. I got the Note 8. Love it. Anyways, big week. It's funny because I had somebody who was messing with me the other day. I was like, "Is every week a big week?" And yes, every week is a big week. I'm a firm believer. If you wake up, it's a good day. So, it's a good week. There's a lot going on, a lot of moves going on with rosters in the NFL. One particularly that evidently I'm the only one that gives two rips about. So we'll see. We'll sit back, and I'll tell you a little bit about one particular move that I don't think is a good move for the team in the long run, and even if they win a couple games in the short run, I think it ended up hurting the team in a way that they wouldn't expect. So, Kevin will be on to join me in a little while. We'll get into his college football picks of this week. You can always find his picks over on his blog at kevcrestsports.blogspot.com. And he said Beyond the Commentary site is working its way into existence. So all these things take time. They all take time. So okay, just trying to pull up another site here. Anyways, we had some game again last week. I kind of closed the show with college football, and it was a week again with college football games. You know, people tend to kind of knock if it's not a ranked team. I tend to try to lean away from that sort of stuff because rankings really don't matter so much this time of year. I got to watch bits and pieces of a lot of games this past weekend, which I was kind of excited about. UCF, University of Florida, thumped undefeated Memphis 40-13. You know, and then meanwhile, Georgia turns around and puts another thumping on a team, on Tennessee, 41-0. And that game there, particular game there, I got some text messages and said, well, at this point, it's not really if, it's when Butch Jones is going to be done in Tennessee. Got stuff under the desk here. Not good surprise stuff. Huh. Anyways, it's always nice to have good surprises under your desk, right? Right. Bad surprise, not so much. And it just showed Tennessee. I mean, last year they were completely overrated preseason and really didn't live up to the hype at any point in time until the bowl game against Nebraska, where it looked like I think that's where Joshua Dobbs single-handedly earned all the scouts' attention, and that's what got him drafted. He should send a donation check to the University of Nebraska for helping him get drafted in the NFL. I think that game solidified and was really what did it. Because other than that game, he really didn't look like a quarterback. At least not a good one. Anyways, Tennessee lost their top 2 running backs from last year and their top quarterback and offensive line, their top defensive lineman. So they lost a lot. But that's the whole point of recruiting. So you have the guys to come in and fall in line behind them. You know, the depth thing, you know, that's one of the arguments that SEC makes. We have so much NFL talent. Really. The South has so much talent, the ACC and the SEC. Well, no, it's not about that. And if the talent doesn't translate to wins, what does that even say? That you don't have coaches? That you can't win games? Point in case. I mean, we want to talk about that, but let's face it, the ACC, the one team in the ACC is Clemson. After that, is a big drop-off of everybody else. And the SEC is Alabama. It's a big drop-off for everybody else. And it's nice that the conferences and the teams in the conference want to rally around their teams and have hope. But what really separates people that are sports fans that see it because they watch more games than just the Southeast, you'll realize that the people that are saying da 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 da, this is so good, they're going to come up and challenge. They're the Homer fans. It's the fanboys saying that. You know, I mean, you're going to always have a local station that's going to be at least one show or one main person on your news or on your sports radio that is going to be the Homer. You have to, and they're beloved, and a lot of people follow them. You're going to have some pessimism, but you can't go too far away from that with your local channels because people will tune it off. So yes, they're going to tell you, and the funny thing is I'm just sitting back here, people keep talking about, I heard one radio show actually here in Florida that was who's the reporter. And again, media people, reporters ask some of the dumbest questions. And I get you have to have a quote. Sometimes it's your editor or sometimes your producer wants a quote. Unfortunately, there leads to very dumb questions. And I found out that it is in an abundance when I covered the national championship game last year in Tampa. And I'm talking about people that are seasoned veteran reporters, journalists, media people asking some dumbass questions. I'm not going to name names. But yeah, I was like, really? You get the offensive coordinator for Clemson ahead of the biggest game of his career, maybe in their school's history, that they have a chance to win, and this is where you ask them? I was partly mad at the guy, and again, he is from ESPN, and he's about half my height. Again, I'm not going to name names, but I'm like, my battery is dying on my phone where I was taking video. I was trying to do some, if you go back, you'll see some of it on Facebook. If you go over to the CHT on Sports on Facebook, you'll see some of the video there. Some of that I did live feed from Media Day because I wanted to get my questions, and I was being courteous, but people ask some dumb questions. And someone asked Nick Saban, who do you think the second best coach in the SEC is? Why? Is that that sounds like a question, like you're going to ask somebody, the avid professional, one of the top person at his job in the whole sport. Who do you think second best in your conference? Like, was that an argument you had with your buddies at the bar over beer? Oh, you know what? I'll see Nick Saban next week. I'll ask him. We'll see what he says. Get out of here with that. That's what I say. Are you being serious right now? You being serious right now? Is that a real question? Who's the second best coach in the SEC? In your opinion, Nick Saban? Coach, who gives a rip? That's who. I don't care. I don't know. I don't go ranking and grading coaches. It's the dumbest, not the dumbest, but in the lead. It's in the lead of dumb questions. It's amongst that pool of dumb questions. For those of you listening online on Blog Talk Radio, or trying to get in on Blog Talk Radio via Skype, yes, you can Skype into the show. You can Skype call it for free. So if you don't want to use your minutes, because evidently there's some carriers that don't offer unlimited minutes now, and you say you're on a track phone, I guess, I don't know, and you have Wi-Fi, click on Wi-Fi and you can Skype into the show. Yeah, you just go to blogtalkradio.com/GoLong Media. That'll take you to the channel, and then it'll be the top show. It's the show that's going on right now, and you'll be able to hit Skype, and it'll take you to the Skype app on your phone or on your laptop, usually. But right now they're saying that the wait to connect could be up to 30 seconds. So if some of you are listening on your computer waiting for Skype to connect, I just want to give you the update from Blog Talk Radio. If you don't want to use the internet and your data and you have your Wi-Fi on, you can also go over to the Spreaker app, download the Spreaker app for free, and listen to the show on the Spreaker app for free. or wait till midnight and listen to it on SoundCloud for free. Or you can go over to Google Hangouts right now. Just type in, the Cold Hard Truth on Sports radio show. It'll come up, and it should be at the CHT on Sports on YouTube or Hangout. It's the handle. And you should be able to listen or watch the show for free over there. We're all about free access. Tonight, we are planning on going and doing the overtime segment on Facebook Live. We don't want to give the show free everywhere. Plus, Facebook Live, we're trying to keep that down to 30 minutes. Or an hour, rather. Under an hour. Sometimes we do an hour. Sometimes we go shorter. It just depends. You will notice there are no commercials playing right now. We don't do a ton of commercials here. We want to be able to get content out. However, if you are an advertiser and you're interested in advertising on this show or the website and our publications, contact us. Go over to, you can email us to thechtonsports@gmail.com, or you can reach out on Facebook. Do not go to Instagram or Twitter and try to message the show or me, because you're not going to get through. It's just, there's too many people always messaging there with the auto replies and people asking questions for, I don't know, I don't really read it all. I try to go through and sometimes look at some of the things and some of the messages, but I can't get to all of them. So that's a bad way to try to reach out to us. You can tweet at the show if you want to tweet. I got Twitter up here during the show. You can tweet at the CHT on Sports, or tweet at me directly at Matt Long Sports. And I should see it here during the show. The VIP text message line is also open. If you want to text in, for those of you that have the VIP text message line. So, lots of ways to listen, watch, contact us live every Tuesday, 8:30 to 11:30. So, just getting back to the NFL real quick. This week, and the Bears announced that they're going to bench Mike Glennon, and they will be starting. They're going to be starting Mitchell Trubisky at quarterback. Now they're 3-1. Okay, that's not a good start. Now they're looking at again a big loss in Green Bay. They have the Vikings at home here coming up on Monday Night Football. And then they have the Ravens, Panthers, Saints, and then Packers again. So that's their next 5 games. And let's keep in mind, Mitch Trubisky played well in the preseason. I know a lot of people wanted to crown him the starter in preseason. Fan base very excited. Coaching staff liked what they saw out of him. Obviously, he competed for that starting job. But Glennon won. That's because he has more experience in the league, and whether anybody wants to believe it or accept it or not, even being on the bench in Chicago, he's one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the league. I was having a conversation this week. I have a group of us that are very sports-minded people. That we're we're talking about this, and I brought up that he should still be starting, that he's a starter in the league. Now, we have to also understand this, because you could look at like San Francisco. He'd be starting in San Francisco. He'd be starting in Cleveland. He would probably be starting. He could potentially be starting in Buffalo. He could be starting. There's a number of places that he could be. I had 7. I'll find the list here in a second. 7 teams that I had listed off. He could be a starter today. 8 if you two. I think it was 8 including Chicago. And then on top of that, basically every team in the league, he would be the top backup. So, in a situation where quarterbacks have went down, he would be starting right now. Again, he is the top backup in the league, but he's also one of the top 32 players. Him being one of the top 32 players means he is, today, good enough to be a starter in the NFL. So he is a starting quarterback. That's what he is. He's not an ideal starting quarterback. He's not your franchise quarterback. He's not the guy that you're ultimately looking for, that a guy that's a big playmaker. He's not going to do a lot with his feet. He's a pocket passer. He can manage the game. And Chicago's system and their coaching staff is not a good fit for him. I thought he should have stayed with Tampa or signed a big backup deal with the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are a good fit for him because he'll fit within that system well. With Andy Reid, he needs an offensive-minded head coach and a system that is geared to work with quarterbacks. He'd probably do pretty well in Dallas because, again, there are some weapons and stuff he has to utilize. Now, here's the big thing. And they said, you shouldn't bench. Why? Because you don't think Trubisky's ready? Well, no. I don't think he's developed enough, and he should be thrown to the wolves right now. Even if he does have some success, his year 2 will probably be at a bigger lull than an up. Because once you get a few games of game tape on the guy, that's when stuff starts to unravel. We've seen that with rookie quarterbacks, a lot of them in the past, even the ones that have played really well. So no, I think it's a bit mature for him to be playing at his stage of development. Okay, again, preseason is preseason. I know a lot of people say, well, look at Dak Prescott. He did good in the preseason, and he did well. He's struggling this year because they had game tape on him. You have to understand that college and NFL are a lot different. NFL guys are spending a lot of time dissecting these games. They'll probably watch. Okay, so let's say we're into week 5 now. So when the head coach and the coordinators and the staff sit down and look at film, they're looking at every game that season. The whole game for that team. So they can tell you as soon as they end up on their next week's schedule, that whole week they're preparing and watching film from the previous 4 weeks. So this is week 5. So we're going to be in week 5. So they're watching 4 games of, for the Bucs, it'd be the Patriots. They're watching all 4 of their games. They're definitely watching week 1 where they lost to Kansas City. And they're looking at what they struggled at. Again, Patriots have their loss of it came at the beginning of the year, typically, and usually September is their month they struggle more, then they start to gel. But they're going to try to look at and see what's their strengths, what's their weaknesses. And clearly, a lot of people have identified some weakness in New England's defense. So they're going to be pointing that out. How can they exploit that? If they don't think that they can do the best job of stopping this offense or creating turnovers, how can they slow it down to push long drives and then get their offense to score quickly and make sure they're scoring touchdowns and holding New England to field goals? So that's what they're looking at. And so they watch every single game. All right, so it changes, too. The technology, they have more technology in the NFL. They have a huge advantage of the camera angles in the NFL. And there's a lot more scouts. And people have just been doing things, more experienced. They do things at a higher level. So that creates a different product and the way that they can dissect and break people down. I mean, you have people who've been dissecting football players for 3 decades that are in the NFL right now. More than that. Some more than that. So, it's to think that somebody can go out there and just, yep, he had good success preseason, or he had good success at the beginning of his rookie. Everybody comes down to earth at some point in time. Everybody has bad games, bad stretches. And that's the thing that they're going to try to expose. So I don't think Mr. Trubisky should not be starting right now for the Bears. And Glennon is a starter in the league. So you don't want to bring a guy in for 4 games and he's there and then put him on the bench. You're in the process of having to rebuild that offense. Do you want to get your future in there to struggle? You want him to have confidence. Because let's face it, as bad as people want to say Glennon has played, if you watch the tape, Glennon really hasn't played bad. He's made some mistakes in the process of trying to make things happen, but you pay him to try to make things happen. If we sit and look at who are his weapons, he does not have quality around him as far as his offensive weapons when it comes to receiver core. I mean, they're probably near the end of the league as far as ranking core. I'm just looking at this here, ranking here, at week 5 ranking for the offensive line, 29 out of 32. Almost the worst offensive line, third to worst offensive line in the entire league. If your line cannot block you for you, and your receivers aren't running routes right or well, or they're not getting to their spots, that screws up the whole timing of the offense. I've watched 2.5 of their games, and I watched his wide receiving core for Chicago, and the route running is sloppy. They allow defenders to manipulate and maneuver them, and it's caused interceptions. They don't run the right route. They don't run the route where they're supposed to go. I mean, you come across the face of the defender. They're allowing the defender to reach and grab the far side. One example was in one of the games. The defender reached across far side of the body, pulls the receiver, knocks him a couple steps off his route, and that couple steps is about what it was overthrown. The safety sees that. He sees the ball in the air. He runs over to it. Again, the ball's already in the air when the defender, puts his hands on the receiver. It should have been called a pass interference. It wasn't. But it ended up in an interception. Is that Glennon's fault? No. He threw it to the spot. That's what you want out of your quarterback. You want him to throw it to an open spot. You don't see that's a big problem that a lot of the guys coming into the NFL, the quarterbacks that struggle. If you're a college quarterback, this is something, or high school quarterback, even better. What you have to work on is throwing the receiver open. Too many guys want to thread it in there to get it to where the receiver's at, and they don't throw it to them until they're open. In the NFL, you can't throw it to the open guy because they're too fast. The defense will be there. They'll knock it down or they'll intercept it. You have to anticipate and see where he's going to be open at and throw it to that point. And you have to trust that your receiver can get there. That's why you practice. There's a lot of reps of getting the timing down. You have to be able to put the ball where the receiver is going to be or where you want him to be. And he has to know that's where he's supposed to be. So, as much as we want to kill quarterbacks for throwing interceptions or incomplete passes, we have to look at why are they incomplete or intercepted. Was the receiver running his route right? Was he making sure the defense was not dragging on him or holding on him or knocking him off his route? I mean, if he would have simply, when he came across the face of the defender, he would have simply used a club arm to make sure those arms were free when he got through. Defensive ends know this well. It's a swim move. It's a swim move. Making sure you use technique to keep space between you and defender so he's not holding on you, not dragging on you. So you can have arms free and your legs free to pursue the ball. If you can't, if you're not free, you're not going to get to it. It's going to be incomplete. And most people don't look at what the receiver's doing or what was the receiver supposed to do. It's not like Madden. It doesn't tell you where he was supposed to be. Which I think that would be cool as hell. But again, that doesn't exist. But that's another thing too. So if your offensive line isn't protecting you, and again, it's an outside-in fail. Again, the interior linemen are the strengths for Chicago. Long, Sutton, and Whitechair, they're good. It's not that they're bad offensive linemen. It's failing from the outside in. Their outside protection isn't there. So it's spacing out more. They're trying to pick up. You're trying to have to count on your running backs to pick up blocks. And if your running backs are picking up blocks, but your wide receivers aren't getting open, that's why you're looking at 8 sacks. 8 sacks in 4 games. That's why you're looking at 5 interceptions. A couple fumbles. There's one was a strip sack. That was the last game. A strip sack. Because the outside protection wasn't there. The defensive end came in hit the ball in the arm, and it went loose. The center bounced the ball off Glennon's knee. That's a fumble on Glennon because it touched him. He snapped it at the wrong time and bounced it off his knee. But that's Glennon's fault. You know, you're only going to get what opportunities are presented. And he's made some mistakes. Some of those, two of them, there's 2 underthrown balls in the Tampa game that were intercepted. But also, the receiver wasn't doing a lot to play defense there either to help out. So, you know, this is his first year. He doesn't have a lot of experience with these guys, and these guys aren't top quality wide receivers. They're just not. So it's not surprising that they have only 1 win. It's not surprising that people think that Glennon is terrible. And Mike Glennon, as far as yardage, he is sitting currently 21st in the league in yardage thrown. He's been sacked 8 times. And it's a problem. Here's the thing. It's like, again, I don't want to fixate on stats here, because stats are important, but we have to understand what they mean when we read them. Pull it back up there. There we go. He's been sacked 8 times. He has 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 4 plays for 20-plus yards, and he has no plays for over 40 yards. Okay. And again, I'll make it perfectly clear. No plays over 40 yards says I don't have time. Only 8 sacks in this situation, that's a good job for him, because he's getting rid of the ball, either throwing it away or completing passes to the running backs. I mean, he's completing 66% of his throws, you know, and he's averaging over 200 yards a game. Over 200 a game on a team that doesn't have a lot of wide receivers. I mean, he's right there with where the rest of the starters in the league are. I mean, as far as yards per game, he is sitting 23rd in yards per game. Completion percentage, he is let's see here. 17. He is 12th. 12th among players with more than 50 completions. So he's in the top half of the league in his completion percentage. He's completing balls. He doesn't have protection and he doesn't have wideouts. So who can he throw to? The only person he can throw to is the wide receiver or the running backs. And that's why they look like they're doing well. I mean, when you're looking at as far as team stats, for receiving, I mean, their leading receiver at this point is Cohen, the running back. 24 receptions for 150 yards. He's getting 6.3, and he has a touchdown. 24 receptions to the running back. Let's see here. Jordan Howard, 10 receptions. He's tied for fifth most receptions on the team. He's the running back. Kendall Wright has 14. Kendall Wright, the guy that second in receiving, with 154 yards at this point, 14 receptions. 13 receptions to the tight end Zach Miller for 143 yards. He's spreading the ball around. He's trying to get it to people. Deontay Thomas, 11 receptions, 123 yards. Josh Bellamy, 10 yards, or 10 receptions for 114 yards. Raise your hand when you hear those guys. His top receiver, Kendall Wright. Let me put it to fantasy owners. How many of you guys draft Kendall Wright in the first round? I wonder, where was 2017 fantasy draft? For Kendall Wright. Let me see. I'm curious. Where did fantasy people? Because these are the fans. These are the people that, the average draft position for Kendall Wright. Let me pull this up here. FantasyPros.com. They had his average draft. Where did they average drafting him? Let's see here. Well, let me see here. He's not in the top 30 wide receivers. ESPN had him as 190. The overall PPRs 191st. For receivers, he's the 64th. He averaged being the 64th wide receiver picked in fantasy drafts. That's their top actual wide receiver. Their top person with receptions is a running back. A running back who's not even their number one. He was their number 3 coming into the season. So I'm not even going to look where he was drafted because I'm guessing he was off the waiver wire for most people. CBS, overall, 151st. As a wide receiver, 55. I'm not going to go on from there. Overall, he's 100 just look at, 183, 191, 197, or 179, 151. The thing is, he's not, in overall drafting positions for every one of these, he is not better than 151. That was the highest That's the CBS overall drafting average. So people that drafted in CBS for CBS fantasy football, on average, drafted him in the highest position on their draft boards than anywhere else at 151. They picked 150 other wide receivers in their drafts before they picked him, and that was the soonest. That was the highest ranked average out there. So you fans that are out here saying, "Oh, Mike Glennon, yeah, he's crap." Don't you? If that's what you have around you, if you have the 151st best wide receiver in the National Football League around you, the 151st best player, he was the 55, average 55 wide receiver. If he's the 55th best wide receiver, that means 54 wide receivers were drafted before him. 150 players in total. So you found 150 guys in the league that you would rather have than Kendall Wright in CBS leagues. And as far as wide receivers, you found 54 other wide receivers that your teams would rather have on average in CBS leagues than him. Again, with ESPN leagues, they found 63 other wide receivers before him, and they found on average 190 players before him that they wanted to draft in ESPN league. Give that a minute. But you want to crucify the guy because why? Well, let's look. If he has the third to last worst offensive line, and he has if he has the 55th or 64th best wide receiver in the league, what does he have? That literally says Kendall Wright is the number 3 receiver on most NFL teams. That's literally what that says by those numbers. He would be the number 3 wide receiver. But yet, he's the number 1 in Chicago. Glennon is throwing to a WR3 as his number 1. You wonder why he's not getting the ball places? Why isn't he getting more yardage? Why aren't they having more positive plays? Who's he working with? The offensive line, 3rd worst in the NFL. I would say they have the worst wide receiving core in the NFL. Defensive side, they're a bit more talented and they're making things work. But still, if you aren't getting time to throw the ball and you can only throw it to your... If your running back, who really, for all intents and purposes, only played a couple of full games, he's your leading wide receiver with 24 receptions. He has 24 receptions on the season. He wasn't even your number 1 option at running back coming into the season. But he has 20. He's leading the team in receptions and yardage. But, it's probably the quarterback that's the problem. He can't get... Wait, no. He actually is in the top half of the league in completing the passes he throws. Wait. But he's getting... Wait. Yeah, he's been sacked 8 times. Only 8 times. Should thank your lucky stars it's only been 8 times. The 3rd worst line in the league. So they're not protecting him. But he's able to only have been sacked 8 times. Yeah, 5 interceptions. Okay, yeah, that's more than you'd like to see. Carson Palmer has 5 interceptions as well. Carson Palmer. We're not talking about removing him as a starter in Arizona, are we? Are we? No? Deshaun Kaiser has 8. Cleveland's sticking with him. Joe Flacco has 6. He's not losing his gig. Cam Newton has 5. We're not running to Anderson yet, are we? Like I said, Palmer has 5. Matt Ryan has 4. Or 5, I'm sorry. Are we replacing Matt Ryan now? He has 5 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. He completes at a worse rate than it by 1.5%. By 1.5% worse rate than Glennon does. But he also has targets, people to throw to. You know, it's amazing. But he only has 5 touchdowns, by the way. 5 touchdowns. 1 more touchdown than Glennon. So, I mean, it's amazing. And it's amazing when people look at it. He's ineffective. He is. Mike Glennon's ineffective. And I'll get off this, and we're going to move on to a different topic. But yeah, is he ineffective? He is ineffective. I will give you that. Is he an ideal starter? No, he is not an ideal starter. He's not the guy you think of. I want him to start my football games. But let's face it. There's what? 12 of those guys in the league? Maybe 10, 12, 12 guys probably in the league that you can turn to, maybe 15 that you could turn to and say, I want that guy starting. I would like that. If I could pick guys to start, I would take him to start. Yeah. He's going to be one of your top 32. He's one of the top 32 quarterbacks in the league. By the way, Colin Kaepernick is also one of the top 32 quarterbacks. And he's still a part of the league, even though he's not with the team. As long as he's with the NFL Players Association, and yes, there's a Canadian team that owns his rights and that are trying to figure out if he's going to come play or not. I'm going to go with not, probably, because we have guys going down, and he's a viable option. I think they're just... A lot of teams are looking not to be the first team to fold, But he, again, we can't hang on all the details of everything all the time. But details do matter. Semantics do matter. And why is it that he's ineffective? And again, in business, companies do this. They break it down to find out why is something ineffective. Actually, Asian electronic makers like Sony did a whole thing. It was in the 90s where we had automakers too, like Honda, where they said, okay, they made a push to remove defects and to figure out why stuff didn't work. Just recall it. So they decided to recall things, fix the mistake, fix the problem altogether, and so this way their products would last longer than their American counterparts. That's why you see like retail values on foreign cars like Honda, Toyota, and products like Sony hold up longer. They last longer, and they, on average, seem to have more value in the long term because they made a push in the 90s to want to get it right. They'll take the L and bring the products back, find out why it's wrong. See, this is why with Samsung. People freaked out. Oh, the 7, the battery blew up, blah, blah, blah. Why did it blow up? I mean, this is the first time we heard of this. And you see mistakes like this. Like, if you relate it to quarterbacks, if you look at the quarterbacks that are willing to push the ball downfield, the ones that want to score the ball, they want to push it downfield, those are the guys that are putting themselves in situations to get more interceptions, have more turnovers. Andrew Luck, trying to make things happen. They're innovative. And that's how Samsung is. They're an innovation company. They were the first ones to come out with quick charge, where you can charge a phone in 30 minutes to an hour. All the way. 100%. And then it'll last 8, 10, 12 hours, just depending on, last all day. In NCF, I think is what it is, where you can actually use, there's an antenna attached to the battery that will allow you to put data from one device to another just by putting them together. And you can port pictures over. First to do that. My phone, this phone here, I can go in the ocean and take pictures of fishes with it. We went swimming with the kids, and I literally did that. I was in the pool taking pictures with the kids in the pool. Didn't phase it. Not one bit. It's underwater. It's not like I dropped it in the water. I'm literally underwater with it, taking a video of them jumping. I go from them jumping into the water, them being under the water, and then the other one jumping and still being under, for minutes at a time. However long I wanted it to. And it works great. The non-wired charger. They were the first ones to do that. Again, VR, virtual reality. First ones. It's funny because you hear too often the media focuses on, the bad stuff. Oh, the batteries blew up. And I think it was 20 or 30 some phones that did it. It was 20 or 30 some phones. It wasn't like thousands of phones that blew up. And again, it wasn't a problem with the phone. It was the battery maker. It's a third party that they worked with. So they went to the third party and they were going to change companies for this phone, for the 8 and for the refurbished 7. They ended up, the battery company ended up figuring out what it was, and they fixed it. And they kept with the company. So the same company makes the batteries that's in the 8, that was in the 7. Same company. But because of innovation, they pushed to fix the problems, to get it right. And unfortunately, we're in a situation with the coaching staff that is not an offensive-minded coaching staff. They're not set up to really utilize the talents they have in offense. So they're in a position that, we need to win some games. John Fox's job is on the line. I drafted this quarterback, and he was the first quarterback drafted this past year. He looked good in the offseason. The fans are unruly and calling for it. The ownership probably, maybe they're like, yeah, let's put him in. We only owe, we're guaranteed, Glenn's guaranteed $18 million. All right, whatever. Let's go with Trubisky. He doesn't work, we'll go back to Glennon. What's the worst that could happen? They both get injured? So, I'm going to move off this part, off this particular topic. But just to say, I guess the moral of the story is, we have to, fans nowadays are more educated than ever before. This is why I really appreciate what Tony Romo does. A lot of what I would do with color commentating is similar to what he does. Well, not at the level he does it, but like that. He can look at the offense and he could tell you what they're going to run, what plays they're probably going to run. He can tell you, hey, this guy lines up here. They seem to always be running it when he does that. He can break down the play quickly just by seeing just a few seconds they are lined up. And that's good for today's fan because it's simplifying the complexity of the game. Because fans know a lot more about the game, but they don't know everything about the game. Glennon is just a case in point. It's not about him having 5 interceptions. As far as, let's see, there are 5 other quarterbacks in the league that are not in danger of losing their job that have 5 or more interceptions as well. So it's not about the interceptions. He's averaging over 200 yards a game with the worst receiving core in the league. His number 1 is a number 3 on every other team, including Cleveland. All right. We can all do better. We can all learn more. We can all understand more. Don't try to take it and make it so simple. Oversimplification is too much. Simplifying it so you understand is good. Oversimplifying just creates havoc. But all right, we're gonna get off. This topic. I see some few messages here on the line, and we will get to those here shortly. All right, I'm going to get back over to phone line, okay. Get into college football. I'm going to let's bring on my co-host. He's also author of the P.K. Frazier novels, which you can go over to Amazon and find. Just type in P.K. Frazier and buy them all. That's the best way to do it. My co-host, Kevin Crest. How you doing tonight, Kevin?
Sorry, Matthew, a little late getting on tonight. Had some personal stuff, and I tried to call in, but for some reason didn't make it a few minutes ago. But
it's all right.
I apologize for that. But yeah, college football, that's my thing, right? And that's what I'm talking about. So
I got off. I went off on my Mike Glennon rant, so you missed the best part of the show.
You ranted that to me earlier today, so I already heard that. But it's a whole lot. I don't think. I think I already heard that. So we'll see how Trubisky does. I mean, to follow up on that a little bit is, I guess we'll see. Chicago drafted him for the future. The future's now. We'll see how they fare. I tend to agree a little bit with you that I think they gave the hook to Glenn a little bit early, and I've been watching a lot of commentary this week about that, and a lot of the analysts on ESPN and Fox are kind of mixed on this. We'll see. I mean, I'm not sure Chicago has enough skill around Trubisky to make him successful right now. I think it's a mistake. I tend to agree with you.
And I was looking up.
You look at
Watson,
you look at Deshaun Watson down in Texas. Number one, they have a fantastic defense, and number two, they have some great skill players around him. So
yep,
that's a whole different scenario down there in Houston. So I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see when they come out in the field Monday night whether or not Trubisky is a real deal. He did play well in the preseason. I'll give him that, and his upside is probably pretty good. But we'll see about that. I mean, I tend to agree with most of what you have to say about the Glennon situation. So we'll see. I mean, we will obviously. The nice thing about this whole thing is you only have a few days to watch it play on the field, and that's what we're all about. Is what happens on the field,
absolutely,
or the court, or the ice, or whatever. I mean, that's the good part, right?
Absolutely. So we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, that's how the old adage goes. But speaking kind of college experience, I want to kind of kick it off with this last week. I know we'll get into the new week here. I know you'll have your picks here in the next few days, and you guys, you lost 3 games, right? Out of 20-some games you picked.
Yeah. Two of those were the Big Ten games that I put on there. I probably shouldn't have even tried to pick them, but
you picked Illinois, didn't you?
Games. But I had a pretty good week. Things didn't go totally chalk, but there were some toss-up games. I mean, a lot of people actually had picked Tennessee over Georgia, and now I'll be honest with you, I did not see that going the way that it did. Right? I mean, I didn't see that going Georgia 41-0 over Tennessee, but still like that one. Washington State over USC, picked that one. There was people that thought that maybe Duke had a chance to get Miami. You got to go Miami there. There weren't a lot of close games this week to pick, so the record was going to be pretty good no matter what. But you look at Auburn, Mississippi State. People thought maybe Mississippi State, after the LSU, could make a run there. But as we've all seen now, with LSU's loss to Troy, LSU's not as good. Therefore, Mississippi State's win is diminished. The SEC is down. Let's admit it. I mean, we both live in SEC country, but the SEC is down. Let's just. I mean, and I'm not saying that it's down forever, but for this season, they're a little bit down. Let's face it. Alabama's going to roll through, and probably Georgia will roll through their respective divisions, and they'll meet in the championship game. We'll see what happens. I mean, Georgia has all of a sudden become a monster. I mean, that's a very good football team. Kirby Smart, defensive coordinator under Nick Saban at Alabama. He's building another Alabama over there in Athens, and so that's going to be very exciting to see what happens over there. And so it wasn't a tough week to pick, but yeah, there are a few games that the people that thought might go different ways. I happen to get most of them in my going my way this week, and we'll see what happens. It gets tougher, and this week's another challenging set of games. But it was Washington State. I've liked them for the last 2 years, as a matter of fact, and we've talked about this before, Matthew. I mean, I know I'm a MAC fan as well, and the Pac-12, for those of us in the East, tend to go unnoticed a little bit. But Washington State, wow, they actually have a defense now, and I'm not talking about a Clemson caliber, Alabama caliber, Virginia Tech caliber defense. But if you're scoring 45 points a game, if your defense is just decent, especially in the Pac-12, you've got a real shot, and I think they do.
Washington State is second in college football in passing per game at 414 yards per game. The second to UCLA.
Yeah, that kid Falk. Let me tell you, they've got a couple of high-profile quarterbacks in the Pac-12. You've got Josh Rose at UCLA, and you've got the kid at USC. But man, this kid Falk can flat out play some football, and I think he has a chip on his shoulder, going, wait a second, what about me, right? I mean, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Don't forget about how good I am, right? And
I
think he's using that to fuel himself.
He already has,
right?
To this point in the season, where, again, this is going into week 6, after 5 weeks of football, he has 1,718 yards, 16 touchdowns, and only 2 interceptions.
Yeah, that's some serious, and their competition hasn't been that bad. I mean, they did beat Boise State, which is a pretty good team.
Yep. Oregon State.
Yeah, they
Nevada and SC.
Yeah, they've beaten a couple of decent teams, but we'll see as their schedule gets a little bit tougher here. They've got to play Stanford, and I think they have. I think they have.
Oregon coming up next.
Cal this weekend?
No, Oregon
this
in
weekend.
Eugene,
Yeah.
and then they go to Berkeley, and then they have Colorado at home. So those are 3 tough games in a row.
Yeah, they've got some tough. That Washington State Oregon game this week is going to be very interesting. You talk about contrast and styles. Oregon's going to try to run the ball and do all the stuff they do, and Washington State's going to try to throw the ball. I haven't published my pick on this yet, but my pick is going to be Washington State because Oregon's defense isn't very good, and Washington State's going to just pummel them. I mean, they're just going to pound them. Oregon, they have come back after a bad year last year. I think Willie Taggart's done a good job to kind of steady the ship up there in Eugene, but they don't have the defense to defend against Washington State.
No.
Like they need to. I think that's going to be listen. It's an early game for the West Coast. It's 7 o'clock Central Time, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. So most people that watch that, I would urge most people, if they can get this game on television, to watch it because it is going to be an entertaining football game. It's on Fox in your time zone, 8 o'clock. My time zone, 7. I would urge people, if they have to DVR, whatever they want to do, you got to watch this game because this is going to be an interesting, entertaining football game. And the Pac-12 games generally are. I mean, last week, the Colorado UCLA game was very entertaining. UCLA pulled that out. The Washington State USC game was great. If you want to watch some good football, entertaining football, tune into the West Coast because if you get tired of watching Alabama win 66 to whatever it was against Ole Miss last week, that was just a debacle, and there's not much parity. But I'll tell you another game. Mentioning Alabama, Texas A&M. They lost that game against UCLA in week 1. UCLA came back and from 34 points down to beat A&M. But since then, A&M's played really good football, and of course it took them overtime to beat what is turning out to be a pretty good Arkansas team. Arkansas has only lost to TCU and to A&M in overtime. And all of a sudden you're starting to look and go, wait a second, these are pretty good teams. Alabama better be careful down there in College Station this weekend. That's going to be, I had predicted. You and I talked about this early in the season. I talked about it on my show with Lou in the morning as well. That I just think Alabama's going to have a loss or two in there somewhere, and chalking up big wins against inferior competition. Plus, they won against Florida State on a couple of special teams plays, and they knocked the starting quarterback out. Alabama hasn't had any kind of decent win yet, and A&M has been tested. And so we'll have to see this weekend. I haven't published my pick yet. We'll see if I go on that one. But, wow, that one's going to be one to watch right there.
And, again, they beat South Carolina in a close game last week. But, again, the South Carolina team is showing some improvement as well. They did beat the North Carolina State team.
Nope.
They beat Missouri actually by 2 touchdowns. They came and beat Kentucky. Again, a lot of people don't think it's a big thing to beat Kentucky, but Kentucky seems to be more on the upswing than the downswing these days. And then La Tech. Again, La Tech, the last few years has been one of those teams in the Sun Belt that has been kicking and fighting and biting and scratching and beating quality teams or playing them close. So they beat La Tech too. So I know we usually talk about one thing that I know both of us kind of have in common when we look at games and look at situations. We're looking at like the bigger, but we're looking at more from an economist point of view than just the rather average point of view. Because, well, why is it that way? Okay, is La Tech challenging for a title? No, they're not. But they're among the top of their conference. They have been in bowl games like the last 5 years. So that says that they're good enough to make it to a bowl game, and they've won a couple bowl games too. So it's not that they are a Power 5 team, but it's not that they're not good competition. They are good they're quality competition to play out of conference. It's going to be a win, most likely, but again, they won by a point. So obviously they played them tough. So there's something to that. People want to discount those sort of things.
Ask LSU about playing a Sun Belt team and how that works out for you, because they lost to Troy this week. I was at the game Saturday between Arkansas and New Mexico State, who's also a Sun Belt. And let me tell you something. New Mexico State didn't have the depth that Arkansas has, obviously. But I'll tell you, they had a quarterback and 2 wide receivers that were just ridiculously talented, and a running back that could run. I mean, this is a team. New Mexico State came into this game last week and averaging 480 yards total offense a game. Arkansas came in averaging somewhere in the area of 350. Okay, this is a New Mexico State team that was dangerous. Arkansas did a very good job of containing them. They had a couple of big plays. They looked a couple of big plays against the Aggies. By the way, Arkansas played the Aggies 2 weeks in a row. I'm not sure many teams are going to make that claim this season, but the Razorbacks did a really nice job of containing a very explosive football team. And I was, by the way, on the 8th row at the 35-yard line, so I had a really good view of what's going on down the field. And Arkansas did a nice job. And so these Group of 5 teams, the Sun Belt, Conference USA, ACC, Mountain West, and MAC, there are some good teams in there. I mean, there are teams that can be dangerous and can pull them upset. We've seen that happen over the last several years. there's you talk about parity among the Power Five, but there's also parity across the board. You have some very good football teams. Last year, of course, it was Western Michigan, right, going 13-0.
Yep.
And then they go into USC. They go into USC week 1 and take the Trojans down to the wire in that game. And so, as far as I'm concerned, I would much rather see the Power 5 teams play Group of 5 teams as opposed to scheduling these FCS games. I mean, they don't make any sense to me. They should split the divisions, forget all that, because there's very good competition within Division 1 that you don't have to go out and play FCS games. I mean, obviously LSU might think twice before inviting Troy into their stadium again, but that happens. I mean, you got to play. And so I think it's great for college football. I think it's great when Troy knocks off an LSU. I think it's great when teams from the Sun Belt and the Conference USA and the AAC, the American Athletic Conference, teams like Memphis who beat UCLA this year, right? There's a number of those. I think it's great. I love it.
I
just love seeing
they
that.
went into Orlando
it doesn't
undefeated and got whooped by Central Florida.
Yeah.
Whooped.
And I think we now have. I think there are. There are 3 Group of 5 teams in the top 25. South Florida, San Diego State, and Central Florida, if I'm not mistaken, are the 3 teams in the top 25 right now, and they are good football teams. I mean, South Florida has gotten over early in the season. Their defense was atrocious. They weren't very good, but they've kind of come on. You're right there in Tampa. You're very familiar with South Florida, I'm sure. Good football team, playing well. Charlie Strong has that team heading in the right direction, and so I think they're on track. After watching the first couple of weeks, I wasn't sure if they were going to be able to live up to their billing, but they have. UCF, which is another an hour northeast of you, up there in Orlando.
Yeah,
they've all of a sudden started to make some serious noise up there, and San Diego State, they're going to win the Pac-12 because they've beaten 2 Pac-12 teams. I think they're 2-0 in the Pac-12, right? I mean, they're looking pretty good, but they've just got the rest of their Mountain West schedule. So that's a very good football team. We'll see. So one of those teams is going to end up in the New Year's Day Bowl. Right now, my money is probably still on South Florida, but San Diego State, I'm not sure where they're going to stub their toes. So this could be all about just the rankings, and if they both run the table, USF's going to get there because they started out ranked higher, and they'll continue to be ranked higher. But we'll see what happens. But it's exciting stuff. But we've got a really big football game in your state this weekend. We've got Miami traveling to Florida State. What do you think about that one?
Oh God, it's interesting. I find it very interesting because in Florida State, for the last half decade, they've been in the top 5 in recruiting year in and year out. So people mean to tell me, so the quarterback goes down, who was a freshman last year. He goes down, and now all of a sudden, the whole team falls apart? Like, it's not meshing. Part of me says it doesn't make sense that they're this bad. And people want to say, oh, they're bad. Let's write them off. They have... Let me just see I guess the latest ranking out was week 4. And Florida State is still... It seems that they're still in the top 25.
Nah, they fell out, but I will say this, and you and I talked about this earlier today in our phone conversation.
Yeah.
So Florida State loses to Alabama.
Yep.
A couple of bad special teams plays. They lose their starting quarterback. They don't play for 3 more weeks. New starting quarterback, Blackman, decent player, and they play a really good NC State team, and we'll see what happens this week because NC State plays Louisville. So if NC State beats Louisville, all of a sudden you go, that's not too bad a loss, right? I mean, NC State's a good football team.
Yeah.
And then they go to Wake Forest, and Wake Forest was 4-0, one of the top defenses in the country statistically, and ended up beating them. I just think that Florida State's they're not as great as they were made out to be early before the season, ranked number 2 or 3, depending on the poll. But we'll see this week. I mean, I haven't made this pick on paper either. I'll do that the next couple days. But I'm inclined to pick Florida State here. Maybe because I just don't like Miami because I'm a Virginia Tech person and we don't like Miami. It's just that's just for the principle. On principle, we don't like Miami. But Miami hasn't beaten Florida State in 8 years, and so Jimbo Fisher is going to find a way to get this Blackman kid. And the kid showed flashes of brilliance last weekend. And I don't think Miami's defense is as good as Wake Forest defense. And so we'll have to see. And Florida State's defense is not what's been killing them. I mean, they haven't given a lot of points. I mean, it's a good defense. And so, I'd have to err on the side of Florida State. They're at home. And so we'll have to see. But this is a big game for Florida State and for Miami. This is a very big statement game for both teams because Miami's trying to do something they haven't done before. It's hard to believe, Matthew, that Miami and Virginia Tech entered the ACC the same season, 2004. And since that time, Virginia Tech has 2 ACC championships and I believe 4 division championships in the ACC Coastal, which they share with Miami. And Miami has 0-0. And so, Mark Richt shows up in Miami. They're trying to re-energize the program, but the proof's in the pudding. They've got to deliver, and they haven't delivered yet. And so this weekend is a huge game for the Miami program to see if they can deliver against a team they haven't beaten in 7 years.
When Miami made the call to cancel the game, they were looking at a schedule of Arkansas State, which come off of taking Nebraska down to the last play of the game. Realistically could have lost. And then playing Florida State. Probably have to give up some plays. So, in light of the hurricane, obviously, let's not play that game. My issue was they cancel it. Find a way to play it. Play it on a Wednesday, Play it on a Thursday. Who cares? If you have a bye week coming up, then play it on the Wednesday of the bye week. You still got the same Saturday off. Play it on the Wednesday. Play it on a Friday. Whatever. You can make it happen, but they didn't give enough respect to them. That's what it gave me. It really lost opportunity. Upset me. So then they struggled in the first half against Toledo. And Toledo's not a bad team. They're a MAC team.
No. You're talking NAC attack again, right?
Yeah.
Toledo is, in fact, that might have been one of the best games Miami's played in a couple of years because that was Toledo can flat out score some points, and they shut them down in the second half. That was impressive for me, for Miami. I will give Miami some kudos for that. That was a good performance.
Because Toledo was leading 16-10 going into half, They shut them down in the third quarter and held them to 14 points. Again, holding Toledo to 14 points in a quarter is tough. And then on top of that, Miami found out a way to score 28. So that's the thing, is that fourth quarter is what made the difference in the game. That big fourth quarter for Miami. Few balls go their way. Toledo couldn't capitalize on some opportunities. I mean, look at the score. I mean, the score was 28-14 just in the fourth quarter alone. We can go back and look at all the other games in college football and the NFL, and that's probably pretty close to a lot of NFL scores and a lot of college football scores. 28-14. I think the Nebraska game ended somewhere around 28-14, 28-10 or something like that. And that was the fourth quarter score. So those two teams found a way to put up a ton of points on each other, and Miami's defense stepped up big in the third quarter and fourth quarter, limiting them to only 14 points in the second half, which is tough to do. I mean,
and Miami played a very, very good defensive game against Duke last week. I mean, Duke's not bad. Came in 4-0. So, I think Miami's for real. I don't want them to be for real, but I think they are for real. But, it's like they got to get over this FSU hurdle, and we'll see. We will see Saturday, what happens with that. I mean, it's going to be a terrific ball game. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be very defensive oriented. I think it's going to be somewhere in the, 24-21, 20, 27-20. I mean, by college football standards, that's a low-scoring game.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we're going to have. And I'm going to watch it. I mean, I'm obviously going to watch it. I think it's going to be a terrific football game. It's a great rivalry. We'll see. It's going to come down to how James Stockton can play. I mean, the quarterback for FSU, the freshman, the true freshman. If he can make plays like he did at the end of the game against Wake Forest, I give the edge to FSU. If Miami can get him off his game and overwhelm him, I'll have to go with Miami. But right now, I'm edging towards Florida State only because I think Florida State's defense can stop Miami. I think they have, and I think they can, and we'll see. I mean, this is one of those toss-up games, right? That
yeah.
When I make all my picks, you go, wow. I don't know. You just have to kind of not so much flip the coin, but just pick one, right? Because this is a pick-up game. I haven't seen what the line is on this game, but it's got to be really, really close. I mean, just from my experience, it's got to be this thing has to be 1.5. One way
I would say
it up right now
final score
23-16
Miami.
Well, right now Miami's a 3-point favorite. Okay, in Vegas, a 2-point betting favorite. Okay. And that's only because Florida State's playing with a freshman quarterback. So, you saw what happened early in the season with Virginia Tech, for instance, and with Clemson, both playing with redshirt freshman quarterbacks going, well, we don't know how good they're going to be because they got this quarterback. All of a sudden, Virginia Tech, and by the way, the Hokies only dropped to 16 this week after losing to Clemson. Terrific football game. Saturday night. I mean, my Hokies lost, but they gave a good shot.
That was a good game.
Clemson's just a better version of Virginia Tech. Yeah, Clemson's just a better team. I mean, there's no way around that. And I said it on the radio show last week, and I think I even said it on our show, they're just better. I mean, they're a year or two ahead of Virginia Tech. Tech had a couple things go against them. If they'd gone for them, it might have been a little closer game. But But that's why you're looking at Florida State as an underdog. You know, you got to think Jimbo Fisher is going to get another week with this kid. He did play great in that final drive last week against against Wake Forest. And so we'll have to see. I really, it's a terrific game. There's another terrific game also going to be at the same time on Saturday. West Virginia, TCU.
That's always a tremendous game.
It is, and TCU. By the way, just as a betting tip here, if you want to think Vegas totally whiffed on one here, TCU's a 13-point favorite in this game. I would bet for West Virginia on this one, just against the line, because I don't think TCU can outscore West Virginia by 13 points. I mean,
yeah,
they can win the game, but 13 points, because West Virginia can score some points, and so I don't know. That seems like a very, very big line to me.
These games have ended in Hail Marys and last-second field goals.
Oh yeah. I would definitely. I would throw a $5 or $10 on West Virginia, and this would see if I can make some money, because I don't see TCU outscoring them by that many points.
You know what the crazy thing is? I mean, we were just kind of hit back on like MAC and Mountain West teams and stuff like that, and people as a quality competition. I mean, we're not too far removed from TCU being one of those Mountain West teams. They were in the Mountain West for the longest time, and then they kind of came up and surprised some people and played some decent football, got into bigger conference, and got more money and started winning lots of football games. So it's kind of again, you can't completely discount teams because it says MAC or Mountain West or Sun Belt, or definitely not AAC, which technically was a bowl conference team, but then when it changed from the Big East to the AAC, and then they did away with bowl games, so it didn't matter. But it's
well, when you
go ahead.
When you start looking at the big picture of college football, I mean, I still think we're headed to six super conferences, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you start looking at teams that you're gonna add, because the Big 12 is still vulnerable. That thing's gonna get fractured. That league is not going to survive it, I don't think. And then you throw some of the group of 5 teams in there, and you got to look at teams like South Florida, right? I mean, they've been bantered about as a team to expand. If the SEC expands to 16 teams or 18 teams, right? Or the ACC expands to 18 teams. I'm talking about here, where I'm going.
Yeah.
Where do those teams come from, and where do they go? The big dog in this fight is Texas. What happens with Texas? What happens with the Big 12? A lot of conversation about that. The Big Ten's pretty much set. Where does Notre Dame fall? Notre Dame almost definitely falls into the ACC when they do decide to, make a move, because they're in the ACC at all other sports. But when you start divvying up, and the two conferences of the group of 5 that have the most, the better teams are the AAC and the NAC. And where do you start to divvy those teams up, right? Because you've got some potential, bigger teams, bigger recruiting, bigger budgets, all that. That's something that hasn't been discussed very much in the last year and a half since the Big 12. So that we're going to stay where we are. We're going to have our conference championship game, but that's a sleeping dog right there. That's got to come up at some point in terms of restructuring college football, and especially when in light of some of the things that happened with the Louisville, but the basketball scandal here with the shoe companies and all that kind of stuff. At some point, the big dogs are going to go. We don't want to be beholden to these regulations that the NCAA has on us. We're going to do our own thing. And so you're gonna see something happening. I don't know what's going to happen, but I do know it's going to change. And so you start looking at the teams from those other conferences, and I'm going to throw the Big 12 in there because I just don't see the Big 12 as quote unquote Power 5. They're just not playing. They're just not quite there. They're like Power 4.5, whatever you want to call it. And TCU is a team you look at and go, are they going to be in there? Because obviously Oklahoma State, Texas, right? Those teams are all going to make that move into wherever, whatever that looks like. TCU, they might be on the fringe, but this year I was at the TCU Arkansas game, and I got to tell you, that's a really good defense. That is a quality defense. I saw it in person. Those guys fly around. They make plays. I mean, they beat Oklahoma State. I mean, nobody thought Oklahoma State was going to be even slowed down, much less stopped. That is a quality defense. We'll see what happens against West Virginia. Obviously, TCU still has, Kansas State, and they still have Oklahoma to play. We'll see what happens there. That's a team that, if they do run the table, that's a dangerous team in the national championship because they play defense. I mean, that's a team. That's the only team actually in the Big 12 that plays defense in a mean, aggressive manner. I mean, they stop teams.
Yeah, it's the Big 12 is. I think. I don't know. I don't think you could be down on it so much. I mean, obviously, Oklahoma State, they've had one trip up. Oklahoma's played well. They went into Ohio State and planted their flag in the middle of the O. TCU has played well. Texas is, again, you're thinking they're going to keep getting better. They've hired two good coaches in a row, and one they really didn't give all their support to, and now that they seem to be giving more support to, they're gonna right the ship some more. Well, we'll see. There's enough there that's in the Big 12 to keep the conference there. I don't think, it's obviously it's a bold statement to think that people are going to pillage more from the Big 12 than the Big 12 pillage from other conferences. But I think it has to go to six Power 6 conferences. And with UCF, Memphis, USF, and Houston continuing playing good every year, and the AAC, Temple is in between. They're up one year, down another year. You have these teams kind of in between that'll show a little bit. Syracuse will pull off some big wins out of nowhere. You have the makings of everything that you have in the Big 12 in the AAC already. It's already there. I'm sorry to tell Big 12 fans, but the AAC is pretty much from what we can see as far as football play, where the Big 12 is. So, are they gonna pillage from each other? I think the bad move was the Big 12 not moving hard enough to bring in two other teams. this to be playing this season. I think that was a horrible move. They want to wait and they're trying to look at who's, remember the AAC is going to have a TV contract come up here pretty soon too. And that's going to, again, they're going to look at, okay, so you're in Orlando, you're in Tampa, the largest market in Florida. You're in Orlando, which is the third largest market in Florida. You're in Memphis. Again, that's a top 25 market in the country. And you're in Texas. You're, again, Texas Christian. Where is that? Just near, close to Dallas? Is that Dallas-Fort Worth area? It's like a number 6 market, 5 market in the country. Or Houston's number 3 in the country. So obviously,
TCU's in the Big 12. Well, TCU's in the Big 12.
I meant Houston. Houston. I mean, you got TCU, but I'm saying Houston's a number 3 market. So I'm saying you have 4 teams that are already in top 25 markets.
Yes.
And two of the 3 largest markets in the state of Florida. So and the largest market in the state of Texas. So your recruiting base is great. You're on TV all the time, And Ed Oliver, I don't know why more people aren't talking about Ed Oliver. That guy last year was a wrecking ball on defense as a freshman. He's gonna be tremendous this year too. So at Houston, I mean, the guy is sophomore.
From a big picture, from a big picture perspective on college football, the Big 12 totally balked on expansion. And I'm not sure if it was because they couldn't decide which teams to take or whatever, but in my opinion is they kind of signed their own death warrant when they didn't expand. And we'll have to see what happens, because I agree with you. I see it being in my limited brain here anyway, which makes lots of mistakes in everyday life. But I see 16 team conferences in college football. Okay, that's 96 teams in the power conferences.
Mm-hmm.
We have way too many teams. We have way too many college football teams now that can't compete at that level, and they call it. They say they're in the FCS, in the FBS, but they're really not playing at that level. You've got a bunch of them. Okay, so you have 96 teams. You've got teams like Boise State, San Diego State, and USF, and some others that definitely belong with the big boys, okay? Because they play with the big boys. They play and they beat them, right? I mean, they should be there. There's no question. Then you have teams like UMass and UConn, and oh my God, you got San Jose State. You got some other schools that don't even belong in that division. I mean, they should just admit it and go back to FCS or whatever. Or maybe there's a middle ground or something like that, but they can't compete. You see it. They can't compete athletically. They can't compete. I watched. Did you see the South Florida game against San Jose State? First game of the season. There were like 18 people in the stands. I mean, literally, it was an empty stadium. I mean, that's ridiculous. And then you got games where people can't get. I mean, then you got games in the SEC where they put 70,000 people in, right? You get 93,000 at the Swamp in Florida. You got 106,000 Tennessee, and you've got 12 people in the stands at San Jose State. So, there's definitely a very, very different pecking order going on here, and the Big 12 is kind of caught in the middle. Because they've got Iowa State, and they have Texas Tech, and they have some schools and Kansas, for God's sakes. They should just give up. Okay, just give it up. Just don't even bother. Don't even bother, right?
Why field the team?
And then you've got these rabid schools. And then you've got these schools like Texas and Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, where there's gobs and 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 gobs of money. And so you have this disparity within the conference. At least in the SEC, all the schools are rabid. I mean, yeah, you have Vanderbilt that doesn't necessarily compete, but they're pretty good this year. They're 4-2, I believe. They beat Kansas State. They're competing. Missouri's a joke this year. Their whole athletic program's a joke right now. But that's
by the way,
factor.
You'll like this. The Kansas Jayhawks are in last place in the MAC conference. They lost to Central Michigan, 45-27. Then they lost to Ohio, 42-30.
I mean, you talk about a team that you say, well, they're not that great in the Big 12. They can't even compete in one of the Group of 5 conferences. I mean, listen. If this was English soccer, Kansas would have been relegated to the FCS, right? I mean, they would have been relegated.
Yeah.
They'd be like, you're not good enough. You got to move down a level because they not only do they suck, they're not even trying. I mean,
let me put it this way: they played against Southeast Missouri, and I'm pretty sure. I know we played a tournament at Southeast Missouri when I was in college, and I played at D1 JUCO, and I'm pretty sure. Again, it was a 4-year, but they had some schools like that there. I think they just because it's preseason, trying to warm up. I'm pretty sure we beat them in basketball. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Southeast Missouri is a Division II school.
Yeah, that makes
sense.
They're
in FCS. They're Division II.
So they paid a Division II school to come to Lawrence to lose by only a couple touchdowns.
Yeah. I mean, that's not far from LSU paying Troy $875,000 to come beat the crap out of me. Right? I mean,
It was 17-0. What was the final score of that game? I didn't even see the final score. I kept seeing 17-0. I'm like, wow, they're losing.
It was 27-24. LSU actually came back and almost won the game, but they didn't have enough.
Oh, come on, people! Don't be so. Yeah. Leave Ed alone.
It was close.
Listen. Ed Orgeron is trying to rebuild an offense that hasn't existed in 5 years, 6 years. I'm not being critical. I know. I'm just telling people out there. I'm not. I know. I'm just saying, people. Let's chill out. Let's again. My whole motto, my whole irritation this week has been fans and franchises and programs wanting to pull the gun so quick. Let's pull the trigger. You know. You know, it's a whole.
Oh yeah.
I don't get it. Ed Orgeron is terrible. They're going to want to regret it. Maybe they should just cut it ties now and pay him the $12 million. No.
What? Les Miles left the cupboard pretty bare on the offensive side. Not only that, but I did hear some talk today. Booger McFarland and Ryan Clark were on Mike and Mike this morning. Both of them are LSU alums. Both played a long time in the NFL. Great players, and they were talking about this is a transition period because Les Miles coached in a certain way, and actually a really bad way for LSU. and Ed Orgeron is trying to figure out, how to get this thing better. No one expects him to lose to Troy, but the fact of the matter is that Troy was a bowl team last year, and I know you go, everybody makes the bowl, but that still means they won a lot of football games, right? I mean, they know how to win football games, and that's the difference now that we've got some parity is that these group of five teams come in with confidence because they have good players because it used to be a Power 5 school could stockpile talent, but now if you're a really good player in high school, you want to go play, right?
Yeah.
And so right. So these group of five teams, they can get some good. And I'll use South Florida as a great example, right? So the Tampa area has great football players, right? I mean, it's a really talent-rich area. Well, all those guys can't go to Miami and Florida State, Florida, and so okay. So let's just say you get the guy that's the second choice of Florida or Florida State or Miami, and they say, well, yeah, but you get to sit on the bench, he's going to go, screw you. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to play football because now everybody's on television. I mean, every game for every team is on television. So you don't have to go to Notre Dame or Michigan or Ohio State or USC or the traditional powers to get notoriety. You just go to USF, which, by the way, has a very high-profile coach. And Jim Leavitt built that program, did a great job with it, right? I mean, that was a good football program. And so there's some tradition there. So if I'm like
90 seconds
school and USF comes calling, I'm probably going to say yes because I'm going to get to play. Because Charlie Strong's going to show up at my door and go, you can start. Oh, Florida State's recruiting you? What's your chance of Florida State? You think you're going to play then? Are you going to compete with the guys like Dalvin Cook right there? No. Come to my place and you can play. And that's what's happening, right?
Yeah. 60 seconds.
Come on in. We're going to play. And that's why you got all this help. Now, USF's defense isn't great. I will say that. But their offense, holy crap, Matthew. That's a scoring machine right there. I think their football team's going to outscore their basketball team this year, but
probably
we'll see. But that's a scoring machine right there.
So I was just I was just going over here trying to look at the 2018 class of football, the Rivals 250. Okay, so I'm scrolling down the list and I look cockeyed for a second because in the top 250. Again, in light of the conversation we just got done having
10 seconds.
With Kansas not being in last place of the MAC, the 24th overall player and the number 4 wide receiver in the class, 5 stars from New Orleans, is committed to Kansas right now. I want to find every company in the world that does sales, anybody that does, every school that's looking for recruiters, find out who that guy is in Kansas and hire him away. How do you get a 5-star wide receiver from New Orleans to go to Kansas? Lawrence, Kansas. He's committed. He committed over Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Iowa State, LSU, Mississippi State, Oklahoma, TCU, Tennessee, West Virginia. So all schools that typically have, wins at all for Kansas.
Wow. I guess it must be an Adidas guy.
They are an Adidas school, yes.
Man.
They are an Adidas school.
Okay. Okay.
Uh-oh. Are we breaking news now?
Given the events of last week, just saying that's one of those.
Breaking news here.
Great.
Not to say the FBI is involved or the NCAA, but Devontae Jason is a 5-star commit out of his mind from New Orleans. Voodoo evidently had him commit to Kansas.
When you know those schools, it's like, oh my gosh, and it goes to Kansas. Is he going to play basketball too or something? I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking, why would you go to Kansas? I mean,
that's a good question.
I mean, Kansas football is such a train wreck. They fired the only guy that's had any success there. What's this guy? Mangione, whatever that guy was.
Mangini? Yeah.
Or Mancini. They fired him because he only won he's the only guy that's ever won anything there at all, right? And he went 6-7, and they fired him. He said, you raised the bar so high, and they've won one game a year since. It just goes to show you how I'm sorry, I'm going to say this, how stupid people get. They have no idea. I mean, I know that I'm not a big Colin Cowherd fan anymore. I used to like Colin Cowherd, but he's gotten so full of himself since he went to Fox that I can't stand him. But he did make one statement that was very interesting that I thought was correct. Is if you're a college football program, take away your best coach ever and take away your worst coach ever and take the rest of it. That's who you really are, okay?
Yeah.
So Kansas, take away Mancini, and that's who you really are. And so when you start to think about your expectations, what you should be, you go, wow, I should really stick with him because he's so much better than anybody we've ever had. And they saw fit to get rid of him, which I thought at the time I went, you got to be kidding me. You guys are crazy. And it turns out to be they were crazy. So they got nothing. I mean, they're not even competitive. And they're I mean, they pull a stunner now and then, like every 3 seasons they beat somebody, but I mean, they're so bad. It's not even, it's not even funny. And by the way, with a segue from Kansas to Nebraska a second, I don't think your Huskers or should be left for dead yet. I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, Tanner Lee looks like he had figured some stuff out last week. It was against Illinois, but still, looks like there's some progression in the offense, and it looks like it was a good move that again, Riley stuck with him. I was happy Riley stuck with him. I thought that was a good move. Show confidence in him. Again, he wasn't playing terribly. They had been struggling all season. The Whiteouts were struggling all season, dropping balls, tons and tons of drop balls, and it's just opportunities that were missed, and they couldn't get things going, and that's like my critique. I wasn't putting it off. I've actually been defending him most of the season. Now, his receiving core did a much better job, so I'm sure Coach Williams, Coach Dub, got on, in, and around that ass this week, this last week, and that's probably what it was, because, I mean, he's Coach Williams is one of the top wide receiver coaches in college football. There's a lot of other programs that would be more than happy to have him coaching up wide receivers. and he's at Nebraska. So he probably got on him, and people were completing balls. The tight ends specifically, from week to week, the highest improvement was tight end play. The running backs were great, and I'm happy that Langsdorff has adopted more of the we're going to run to set up the pass instead of trying to force the pass. And I know they've been behind in games, but it's college football. And you have a defense that's actually, they've played pretty good. Since, that Oregon game, they kind of figured out in the second half of the Oregon game how they were going to play football on the defensive side. And Nebraska really hasn't given up a whole lot of points or yards since that point. They've done a good job of figuring it out.
So big game this weekend. Got Wisconsin.
Yeah.
In Lincoln.
Yeah.
Can they give it up to give them a fight, or what's the deal there? Because that they played really well against Illinois. Illinois is not a bad team. Illinois, that wasn't a slam dunk win.
Illinois is starting 5 true freshmen on each side of the ball. That's Illinois' problem.
But they're still but they played well. They've won a couple games. That's not a bad team. But to win 28-6, that's a good showing. Against Wisconsin, what does Nebraska have to do to beat Wisconsin?
Well, here's what I'm kind of looking at.
It's either
if you compare who Wisconsin's played so far, if Nebraska is closer to BYU as far as what they can do, they're in trouble. If they're closer to Northwestern, they're in a good shape because they can win. It's a winnable. I think Wisconsin is a winnable game for Nebraska. I think they lose.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
But it's a winnable game. And people should be upset if they do lose.
Well, you get a couple turnovers, things go your way. No, BYU has no offense, so I don't think it's a fair comparison with BYU because BYU does not have much this year. They've lost LSU, didn't score, lost to Utah, didn't score. They lost to Boise. BYU it's not nearly as good a team as Nebraska, I don't think. And by the way, Nebraska's loss with Illinois, that was one of those, excuse my French, brain farts. I don't think the players prepared as well as they could. They did end up coming back and almost got that game, but that was one of those. We just slipped that one. That's
they did nothing in the first half of the game.
And so
nothing.
Yeah, nothing. It was horrible. And turnovers, pick six. What was there? Fumble recovery. There was all sorts of bad things happening in the first half of that game. And so I agree with you. I'm looking at Wisconsin beat. Well, Wisconsin played Utah State, which is nobody. They played Florida Atlantic, which is nobody. They still gave it 14 points to Florida Atlantic. BYU, I think that was BYU just got run over in that game a little bit. Northwestern gave Wisconsin a game. I think Nebraska has a very good chance to win this football game. But they've got to execute on offense. That's been Nebraska's problem, right? You got to execute. I think that's some talent. I think they can, they can win this game. But and Wisconsin's defense isn't nearly what it has been in the past, right? You think, Wisconsin is this big defense, not so much. Northwestern's not very good. I'm sorry. They were good last year. They're not very good this year. And and at Camp Randall, Wisconsin had problems with them. Northwestern was in the game late, and so I think Nebraska has a shot. They've got to execute. I mean, you're in Nebraska, and you watch every second of every game. They just got to get it done on offensively, and I think they can be all right. But they got to do that, and we'll see if they can. They got a tough schedule coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both do. Both Wisconsin and Nebraska do.
Yeah, they do. I mean, Nebraska's got. I think you guys have Ohio State coming up after Wisconsin. I mean, you've got Wisconsin, Ohio State, Purdue, and Purdue's no pushover. I mean,
no, Purdue, the last time they played against Purdue in Purdue, they lost.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I'm actually leaning towards picking Nebraska against Wisconsin. I don't know why. I just one of those.
I don't know why either.
But I cannot pick Big Ten games. If I didn't pick Big Ten games in my blog, I'd be like 90%. Because I just can't seem to get the Big Ten right. 2 of the 3 games I missed last week were Big Ten games.
You missed the Big Ten games, huh?
It was the Iowa game. I missed it. It was who beat Iowa? Who beat Iowa? It was Iowa lost, and it was that Maryland against Iowa?
Michigan State.
I missed. I missed the Michigan State Iowa game, and I missed the Minnesota Maryland game. Those are the 2 games I missed.
Yeah, Maryland won.
Those are 2 of the 3 games. Yeah,
and that's Nebraska's schedule right there. The rest of their schedule is Wisconsin at home, Ohio State at home, 2 Purdue, Northwestern at home, 2 Minnesota, 2 Penn State, and Iowa at home. So,
wow.
I mean, there's 3 top 10 teams in the next 6 weeks, 7 weeks.
Yep.
And Iowa was just booted from the top 25. So.
Yeah. I got to sign off. It's been a good talking, and we'll catch up next week.
All right, Kevin Crest, ladies and gentlemen. And he leaves there on a good note. But I know a lot of people have been asking me for my pick for Nebraska this week, and I just in light of the way that they've been playing, this is a very winnable game. They haven't allowed more than 36 points in any game, and they haven't allowed more than 17 points in the last 3 games. Now, again, that is Northern Illinois, Rutgers, and Illinois. Not the top level competition. Oregon, who can put up points, and Arkansas State, that has a pro prospect, wide receiver, and quarterback, and they have won that division, Sun Belt, 2 years in a row, put up 36. So, Oregon put up 42. Excuse me. Illinois, Northern Illinois put up 21. So Nebraska's done a pretty good job of limiting the damage, limiting where the game is and stopping momentum. The defense have done a good job of that. A lot of it, the defensive ends are starting to get around the end, and the front 3, the front 7 is getting there. So you're seeing more interceptions, you're seeing more coverage plays. It's something that I'm looking for them to start dialing up some more blitzes as we get into Wisconsin, Ohio State, stuff like that, stuff we weren't looking for in the beginning. Nebraska is actually surprisingly efficient on fourth down, too. So that's another thing that bodes for Nebraska. Their run game is pretty good as well, among the top in the conference. So we can expect for them to run the football fairly well. Let's see, I was looking for total teams for rushing, where they were nationally, but I didn't have that there. All right, but don't, Nebraska fans, don't count them out. Nebraska can win this game. Again, I mean, a lot of people have been rushing to, let's fire Mike Riley. Let's fire him. Filed the athletic director. Did he need to go? Maybe. Is Mike Riley the answer for national titles? Probably not. Do you want to hire Scott Frost? I get that. Growing up in Nebraska, seeing the guy that won the last national title for the school become a head coach isn't a bad thing. No, I'm not doing the Facebook Live tonight. I didn't have time to set it up, but thanks for asking. So you won't get this on Facebook. Won't get this on Facebook Live. The funny thing, so I was up at the University of Florida today. I stopped by Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. And the parallels between the University of Florida and the University of Nebraska are kind of uncanny. They have 3 Heisman winners. Nebraska has 3 Heisman winners. The number of national titles, conference championships, yada, yada, yada. It goes on and on and on. By the way, Nebraska's facilities are way nicer. Way nicer. The stadium's old, but it's taken care of better. And I could see, I mean, the swamp is interesting. I was talking to some of the guys that take care of the field and stuff like that. The University of Nebraska plays on turf. They always have. They don't play on grass. But the parallels are pretty interesting. And both the programs are kind of going through that phase of where they were at the top of college football. They've kind of fallen off. The thing is, with Florida, they go kind of in stretches. And you can kind of look at when teams were good. Miami was good before Spurrier came. Bowden was here. He was pretty consistent. Spurrier leaves, Miami gets better. And then they get Urban Meyer. Florida gets better. Miami goes downhill. A lot of Miami's issues are internally self-inflicting sanctions that kind of kill it for them. But Florida State has actually been remarkably consistent in a lot of ways. So, as far as I say, Florida shows some parallels. I think Florida State does as well. And to be honest with you, the advantage Florida and Florida State have been in Tallahassee, have been in Gainesville many times. is the weather. That's about it. Nebraska is stronger in some areas academically than the two, and Florida is stronger in some areas than Nebraska. Miami's stronger in some areas than them too. Academically, it just depends on the school. They don't all specialize in the same kind of things, but it's not. Nebraska isn't far off. I know a lot of people have written Nebraska off, and they don't think a national championship there is possible again. Well, I'm telling you this. If Wisconsin can, year in and year out, be in the top 10 and in consideration, so can Nebraska. Because Wisconsin doesn't have anything that Nebraska doesn't. Outside Nebraska having actual national championships and Heisman Trophy winners. Nebraska has a richer history. Wisconsin has been more accomplished on the field and at the highest end. Nebraska had been pretty consistent as far as wins under Bo Pelini. It just seemed to be a few games they couldn't get over the hump. They couldn't really get the offense going to win games. And then the games that the defense couldn't show up on, they really didn't show up on, and that was typically in the two conference championship appearances that they've had since they entered the conference 10 years ago now. Almost. And that's not what anybody had in mind. I know a lot of it has been some irrealistic expectations. I think Bone needed to waver more on his coordinators and trying to pay to upgrade. But you have to understand that a lot of guys, when they get their first major head coaching gig, they want to bring their guys and their people up with them. They're not doing a ton to look outside of the program for stuff. They're looking for people they know, not necessarily people that they've seen do well for top coordinators or assistant coaches or something like that. So it's again, there's potential there. Just people, you have to learn patience. If you're firing coaches after three seasons, okay, first of all, let's be real. Nebraska, why? Let's be real. Other than the fact that Scott Frost played football at Nebraska, what should really pull him back there? Why? Why come back to Nebraska? Is Nebraska a destination? Is it better than UCF? I mean, he took literally a UCF team that was crap in his first year there. They literally didn't win football games. In his first year there, he took them to a bowl game. In his second year, they're undefeated in the top 25 going into week 6. UCF is competing with USF, who, again, UCF just I mean, the last coach they fired, they put a number 1 quarterback in the NFL. Now, you can argue all you want how effective Blake Bortles has been. He's still the quarterback there, and I do believe the Jags are 3-1 now? 3-2? I have to pull it up here. I mean, it's... See, the Jags are 2-2. And they're sitting at the top of their conference right now. They beat the Patriots in week 1. That's the preseason. Yeah, they beat them in preseason. No, that's good. Regular season. Pull gets up the other ones. All right, so they lose to the Jets last week. They beat the Ravens badly. They lose to the Titans. Pretty good team. But they beat the Texans 39-7. So they beat them pretty badly. So their losses, I mean, it's kind of been up and down. What to expect? I mean, Bortles isn't playing terribly. He's yeah. I mean, the funny thing last week, I see they're down, and that game against the Jets was actually not a bad game. It was tied 10-all at halftime. The Jets scored 10 and they go up 10 in the third quarter. People start saying, "Oh, they are who we thought they were." And then the Jags come back and scored 10 in the fourth quarter to take it into overtime. And the Jets win by a field goal in overtime. The Jets are 2-2 as well. You know, obviously they're not trying to tank as much as people thought. You know, it really is amazing when it comes down to it. I mean, I heard all these Ole Miss at the beginning of the year. Freeze is out, he resigns, and people talking about, yeah, you know, Ole Miss is not a destination. I mean, they're pulling, how do we steal this guy over here and get him? Maybe we could, like, why? Why would you pull? Why is Ole Miss pulling? And I'm going to ask, again, I don't think Nebraska's necessarily a destination. I think they're a wonderful program. And they have probably better facilities than probably 99% of the rest of college football. And 100% of the NFL. But what's going to bring Scott Frost back there? If he's doing well at UCF, and he signed an extension after last year, 5 more years. You think he's maybe 1.7 a year? Nebraska will pay him more than that, but what makes people think, oh, Frost will go to Nebraska? I mean, this is the same school. The hand-picked successor won 90% of his game. The Tom Osborne hand-picked successor won 90% of his games, and that wasn't good enough for you Nebraska fans. He's not winning titles. Fire him. You fired him. And then what? Oh, we need something. we'll bring in Bill Callahan, a guy that's philosophy is completely different. Oh, we need to go to the West Coast. I want the West Coast offense. West Coast, well, that's all brave. 2 losing seasons, fired him. And 2 losing seasons, right? I think it was 6 years. He was 6. Did he get 5 or 6 years? He completely obliterated the culture. The traditions, just sharded all over it. Then, who did well? Okay, Bo Pelini was the defensive coordinator for some time, and he did well. He won a national title with Les Miles, so we can hire him back. So you hire him back. And that last year, he comes in as an interim head coach. He was an interim head coach when Solskjaer got fired, and he won the bowl game against Michigan. So after Bill Callahan didn't work, people were looking at Turner Gill, who was doing good at Buffalo, or Bo Pelini, who was a good defensive coordinator, really did a good job with the defense, and he won a bowl game as in a 9-win season. Won the bowl game against Michigan the last time he was there. And he won a national title with Les Miles at LSU. So let's bring him in. So you hire him. He's there for what? 7 years? And the guy never wins less than 9 games. Oh, we're not winning conference championships. We're not contending for national titles. However, he did have a quarterback that was mentioned 2 years in a row in the Heisman race. He put Ndamukong Suh in a Heisman. He was in a Heisman race during that time into the NFL. Probably the defensive player that was most deserving of a Heisman Trophy, and probably in the history of college football. That was this guy. He played for Pelini. A lot of players he did put in the NFL. A lot of them are still in the NFL. However, he wasn't winning national titles. It's just like he's gonna need it or bust. You know what? But it was exciting football. The team was winning. He needed to work on upgrading his coordinators and spending more money to hire better coordinators. He needed to be able to learn how to do what Tom Osborne was doing with the work ethic and the practice schedule and everything, and then at the same time understand what Nick Saban's doing in Alabama. Bring in guys that got fired as head coaches as assistants. Give them a job right away. How can they help you as assistant head coaches or coordinators? Get that in the building. I mean, look at the Hoosiers. I mean, they fire their head coach, and then he gets hired right away at Ohio State. Ohio State has Illinois again, or Indiana's was competitive somewhat. They fired him, and he is then the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. And your defensive coordinator is Greg Schiano, who was a head coach at Rutgers that brought them up to prominence, that for all intents and purposes got them to the point to where they could be considered for the Big Ten, and then had a 10-win season in Tampa as a head coach. So, again, the top schools find ways to get the best people in. And sometimes the best people aren't the players. You know, we posted up over on the Instagram and over on social media today. There's a question of the day. All right. And let me pull that back up here real quick. And for the question of the day, again, I don't think everybody tends to think outside of the box. We lean a lot on, I know people are very critical, let me put it that way. People are very critical of what coaches make, the money they make. They think they're overpaid. And that coaches show very little value when it comes to wins and losses and how it affects the team and the outcomes of games. And the question I had was, why is the general thought a coach has little impact on the game and are overpaid, but yet the general thought is teachers are everything and are underpaid? And teachers, by the way, are underpaid. But why? Why? I mean, if the coaches are the teachers for the sport, they are teaching these kids, molding them for the basics of the sport. You understand? Again, people think because money is being made in high amounts that means that the participants of the profitability, because there's profitability there, the participants are professionals. No. College athletes are amateurs. That will not change. It doesn't matter how much money schools make. I mean, if you want to call college athletics an unpaid internship and that registers better, then call it an unpaid internship for the NFL. But we're only talking about a fraction of percent of the guys that play, even the ones on scholarship, that actually will make it as a profession. So we have to sit back and understand that whether you think players should be paid or not, the coaches earn their money. The coaches are where the wins come from. You know? They are putting in game plans. They're doing the training. They're doing the preparing players, teaching the players. They're there for practices. You know, to say that the coach doesn't have an impact is nuts. Because if a coach didn't have an impact, Florida wouldn't have had down years. Miami wouldn't have had down years. Florida State wouldn't have had any down years. You know, I mean, these are great recruiting spots. University of Texas wouldn't have any problems. They wouldn't have down years. USC, regardless of sanctions, wouldn't have down years. I mean, you want to tell me that the coach has nothing to do with it, but it does. And I just think that people have a tough time accepting what is. And I know it's tough. Just like when I say Mike Glennon is a starting quarterback in the NFL. People want to argue. No, he's not. He sucks. No. He's one of the top 32 people at his position. At his job, he's one of the best 32 in the world. So is Colin Kaepernick. But that doesn't mean he's the best. It doesn't mean he's in the top half. He's clearly in ladder. But he's among the top 32. So that makes him a starting quarterback on multiple teams. Unfortunately, the guys that are higher quality quarterbacks are already on teams. And those teams aren't letting him go. So, and again, some of it's finding a better system for coaching and play. I didn't think that Chicago was a good system for him, and that their personnel was very weak. So if you're just tuning in now or you missed the first part of the show, listen back to the beginning of the show. The moral of the story is there's usually much more to something than we're willing to admit. And when something doesn't sound like it's right, most people are just, that's not right. It's just not right. Despite the amount of evidence that's given. Because there's a bias to it. There's a book. I have it over there. I'm not going to get up. Called Blink by Malcolm Gladwell. Great book. You should read it. Because it's about the stuff that you think you know, but you don't know. And how sometimes the stuff that you do know, you can know very quickly. Like they've done numbers of studies. Like one study was they'd have people watch 15 minutes of a certain professor on mute, or with sound, and give a grade and then rate him based on how effective they think he is as a professor. And it was pretty much right on with the students that spent a whole semester with the teacher. Again, they watch him for 15 minutes. That's it. So people can tell some stuff like that. You know, okay, I'll get to that. You know what? I'll go ahead and segue over that now. Not to cut it off like that. I did want to get into some NBA talk because I pretty much been without it for a couple weeks. Yes, Dwayne Wade is a member of the Cleveland Cavaliers. That's where I said he was probably going to go. That's where he went. That's kind of where my sources said too. Evidently, he considered multiple teams. Oklahoma City was one of them as well. So, he does. He has expressed that he doesn't want to retire in Miami. So it could be a couple games, kind of like Paul Pierce, where he goes back for a couple games and then he retires. I don't know what to make of that team. There was some trade rumors going around that Cleveland wanted to trade a couple players away, Iman Shumpert and someone else, and the first round pick they got from Boston for DeMarcus Cousins, for Boogie Cousins. And that hasn't materialized. Then that period of time, Carmelo Anthony also was traded to Oklahoma City. And people were like, oh no, it's not going to work. We don't know. We know Russell Westbrook was an MVP and put up MVP type numbers. Is he going to put up the same numbers with Carmelo there? Probably not. Paul George there? Probably not. But now, that might actually free him up to take some better shots, or have a chance to win more games because more talent with him. And then Kyrie in Boston obviously seems to be a pretty decent fit there. They have a good coach. But my eyes have been on the Los Angeles Lakers. No, I'm not going to get into LaMelo. I know that was big talk today. But seeing the Lakers, play, it seems like they could be going in the right direction. Now, I know I've heard that Chris Bosh was at a practice there, and that he's interested in signing with the Lakers. And I know, by the way, just for those to update you, the injury to Brandon Ingram was diagnosed as a contusion. So, that's it's a head contusion during Monday's preseason game against the Denver Nuggets. I don't see a timetable on his return. So, it's probably day to day. But seeing them getting better, seeing them growing, makes it a more attractive place. Again, people want to be in LA. Second largest market in the country. Lots of stuff to do. Great weather. Lots of money. Lots of ways to make money. So, after the season, it could look remarkably different in Los Angeles. So, I look forward to the NBA season starting. And I might actually watch the full season this year. It's interesting enough to me right now. I want to see what Philly does. Does Philly improve? I want to see how are the Lakers improving? Has San Antonio gotten better? I know Kawhi Leonard's sitting out the preseason after having surgery. But I want to see what San Antonio does. Are they getting younger and better? There's a lot of questions I have. Very interesting. I look forward to the NBA season starting. So, but that's all we have here for this week's show. I appreciate you all tuning in. Wherever you decided to tune in from, whether it was Blog Talk Radio, which I see a lot of you do every week, or if it's over on the Spreaker app, or on YouTube, or SoundCloud, wherever you guys listen to. If you listen to the show on Somos or iTunes, please let me know how it was on Facebook, though. Let me know on Facebook, because I honestly, I haven't checked over there. We're supposed to be over there, but I can't say that they are. But SoundCloud has a free app. Listen to the show free. You can download the show for free. Allow it to be downloaded for free. Not charging you for it. So just love it. Show the love. Share it. But I'm out. Be looking to put out a couple articles this week. Hopefully that you enjoy, and be safe. You should be able to listen to Take This L tomorrow night from 8:30 to 10:30, and the Boxing Swords from 7:30 to 9:30 on Blog Talk Radio on the GoLong Media channel. But have a great evening. Peace.
Thank you for using Blog Talk